I can't get enough of transforming jet planes. It's such a cool concept to go from a flying vehicle to a robot that can descend into a battle with blasters firing and fists wailing. It was awesome when Macross did it. It was incredible when Diaclone incorporated into their car robots line. And once they became part of G1 Transformers with Starscream, Skywarp, and Thundercracker, you'd better believe my mind was blown and my imagination could not handle how awesome this was. Ever since then, as we've seen iteration after iteration after iteration of Transformers with classic characters coming back again and again, one of the ones I watch for the most is Starscream, to see whether we're going to get an awesome new wave of transforming seeker jets that are going to rock my world. My name is Jeff. This is Beyond Transformers, and today we're going to talk about the Transformers Classics / Transformers Henkei in Japan version of the G1 Seeker Jets, and what a ride it's going to be. Thanks to ToyHacks.com for sponsoring this episode. ToyHacks.com is your one-stop shop for both original repro stickers that look exactly like the original decals your Transformers and G.I. Joe toys and other lines originally came with, as well as some really amazing custom upgrade kits to make your toys look better and more impressive and more exciting than they ever did before. ToyHacks.com, you're going to want to check them out. It's hard to imagine a time when there are only so many versions available of your favorite G1 Transformers characters. These days, there's a non-ending line of versions of Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Megatron, usually not in gun mode, Starscream, and everybody else. But in 2006, there weren't that many yet. From Robots in Disguise to Armada, to Energon, to Cybertron, we kept seeing toy lines that were aimed more towards kids that had some elements of the transforming toys we grew up with, but generally didn't feel like the stuff we knew and weren't really aimed at adult collectors at all. In 2006, Hasbro and Takara were excited because a live-action Transformers movie was on the way that was going to introduce Transformers to a whole new mass audience, and therefore the toy lines were going to transition and become oriented towards those style of robot toys. Now, in the years since, we know those toys feel very, very different from the G1 originals. Some of you watching may be huge fans of those toys. I'm not knocking them. What I am saying is they're very different. And so, as Hasbro and Takara were planning to veer further away from that original toy line we all grew up with, after spending 4 years kind of being in the neighborhood of it, they were going to go in a full-blown, very different direction. Still vehicles to robot Transformers, but an incredibly different style that I'm not knocking. But it certainly was incredibly aesthetically different. However, in 2006, Hasbro and Takara found out that the new movie was going to be delayed by a whopping 8 months, leaving them without a plan for what their next line of Transform robot toys was going to be. You can't release the movie toys 8 months before the movie hits theaters, right? So they had to scramble and come up with a different toy line fast. There wasn't a lot of time to come up with an entirely new theme, an entirely new play mechanic, an entirely new aesthetic design style. There wasn't a cartoon associated with these toys. They were kind of lost with what to do. This is also a time when Hasbro was beginning to become more aware of adult collectors like myself and like you as well, who were looking for a return to the classics. They'd only recently started the Masterpiece line, which wasn't really widely available yet. It was still hitting niche markets. And the American Hasbro Transformers were about to start the Encore line in 2007, their first ever reissue line that was going to be on toy shelves in Toys R Us exclusively. Japan had been reissuing the G1 toys for a number of years at this point, but Hasbro was first beginning to become aware of and start to care about this audience. So when they found themselves stuck without a new toy line, a very simple idea occurred. Let's just go back to basics. So we got a very small, brief toy line known as Transformers Classics United States, Transformers Henkei in Japan, which literally just translates to Transform, which was a return to the classic style, more so than we'd seen with Robots in Disguise, with Armada, with Energon, and with Cybertron. These toys were all plastic. They weren't based on the original G1 designs, but they looked and felt a whole lot more like them while using modern design techniques to give these toys a whole new level of fun and excitement. Some of them were incredible. The Optimus Prime cab, which never got a trailer, was a really fun toy. Jetfire was incredibly cool. Rodimus? Not bad. Megatron was a bit of an embarrassment. But the real star of that toy line was Starscream. An incredibly beautiful toy in both modes, with an incredibly simple transformation, which just left you begging for more. Unfortunately, Hasbro and Takara were using this toy line as a place filler. They weren't really looking to develop it. So for example, if you wanted Skywarp, in the United States he was only available as a Target exclusive 2-pack, where you had to buy him alongside a very lazy all-white version of Optimus Prime called Ultra Magnus. It really wasn't Ultra Magnus, and that toy saw a very limited release as well. If you wanted Thundercracker, he was only available in Japan as a store exclusive. You were out of luck when it came to him. So if you wanted your entire fleet of Seeker Jets, as I always do, you weren't going to get that. They had Ramjet, but Ramjet didn't quite fit the same aesthetic. He's not one of the original 3. He doesn't have quite the same vibe. So while Hasbro and Takara had done their thing, they'd created their place filler, they were ready to move on and do the movie Transformers now. That's when other companies stepped in and said, hey, this toy line has a lot of promise, let's take it further. We saw third-party companies like Fans Project add on and elaborate with these half-complete toy ideas that really had potential. Fans Project gave Optimus Prime a trailer that converted into a base. They also gave Ultra Magnus a trailer that let him upgrade to a larger robot that really looked like Ultra Magnus. Cool. But it was an entirely different company. A company we're less inclined to call third party and more likely to call a straight up knockoff bootleg company called CHMS that decided Starscream deserved an entire fleet of Decepticons. And so they pumped out that toy in relatively high quality in every freaking color imaginable. You could get Skywarp without buying a 2-pack. You could get Thundercracker without going to Japan and a specific store to get him. You could get Ghost Starscream, a translucent Starscream that was only available as a Japanese ultra rare exclusive, and every other color too. So, of course, when I found out about this, I nerded out and bought just about every possible one I could. To the best of my knowledge, there are 2 I never managed to get. An all-silver chrome version and an all-gold chrome version, which I avoided because I was relatively sure that chrome was going to chip off pretty quickly. These toys are not the same quality as the Takara Hasbro originals, and some purists have really maligned the line for not being exactly right. But if you're someone who plays with your toys and doesn't really stare at them, but just has fun with them, they're awfully close. The plastic feels slightly lighter. You feel it in the missile launchers. Those don't feel quite right, but otherwise these toys are pretty darn close to accurate. And they gave me the fleet I never could have had otherwise. While there have been countless versions of the Decepticon Seeker Jets before and since, this is the only version other than Masterpiece where you could really amass an enormous army of just about every possible color available. In fact, the more recent Transformers Earthrise line borrowed heavily from this design when they made their new version of the Seeker Jets. It feels a lot like these guys, but isn't exactly the same, and honestly, I prefer these guys better. So today I'm going to take you to the work table. I'm going to show you every one of these variants I have. I'm going to transform them and hopefully show you why this is the coolest Seeker Jet squadron you could ever possibly have. Let's head to the work table and see it go down. Welcome to one of my favorite parts of my entire personal collection. My Transformers Classics / Transformers Henkei Seeker Jet fleet. Just to clarify which ones are knockoffs and which ones are not. I believe this Starscream is a knockoff. He's a hybrid, actually. I put a couple together. I had several that broke over time to create that version. I believe he's all knockoff. Not 100% sure. This is an original Thundercracker. Thundercracker was not released as part of the Classics line. He was a Henkei store exclusive, but he was later released as part of Transformers Universe in the United States. You had to wait quite a bit of while before he finally came around. My Skywarp is original, and my Acid Storm is actually an original. Believe it or not, they eventually... Hasbro finally figured out there was demand for these toys, and they gradually released a few of them through the Transformers Generations and Universe line. We did get an Acid Storm about 2 years after Classics first hit shelves. Everything else you see here is a knockoff. This entire back row with this Black Starscream, with Sunstorm, with, is that Rainmaker? I don't remember his name. With Sunstorm and Ghost Starscream, those guys are all KOs. And as I said, there were at least 2 other KOs available as well. They're beautiful toys. You can truly barely tell the difference, but don't worry, I'm going to show you all of it. So let's start with my 2 purple guys. Remember, Skywarp is official. He came from that Target exclusive release with Ultra Magnus. This guy is a knockoff. So let's take a look at the difference between them. So here's Skywarp in all his detail. They're not entirely trying to be G1 accurate here, but they gave him his own aesthetic. It's awfully close. Really beautiful toy in most respects. I think the one glaring error with this design is it did have that cavity in there. It's kind of a weird thing. It does not seem aerodynamic. It kind of otherwise kills the look of the toy, but in every other angle, this looks like an amazing Seeker jet. Down there, it kind of shows its hand a little bit. That looks like it's going to become a robot. Not perfect. I prefer the G1 Seeker mode more. Some people prefer the Masterpiece. I just find the Masterpiece is just too darn much work to transform. This transforms quickly. It's fun. It overall looks great in both modes. For the knockoff, it looks incredible in most respects. Really, the plastic just feels slightly lighter. Just so slight. It's almost impossible to tell. And really, they're still using really nice chrome, by the way, on these missiles. It's a good-looking toy. It really is. For a knockoff, it's awfully close. And considering there was no official version of this, you know, if you were waiting for official releases, all you had was Starscream and Skywarp, and if you didn't have a target and weren't lucky enough at the right time, because remember, store exclusives sell for a lot of money online aftermarket. If you don't find them at time, you might have just had Starscream. So let's do the transformation and see how they compare there. So the transformation is going to be the same for both, but you might find that one looks a little bit better than the other, maybe. So first off, we'll pull down the legs. We're going to bend these pieces here. Bend that up as well. Pull out the feet. Already we've got the legs going. This is the really fun part I like. We're going to flip up the wing like that. It's very efficient. It's very cool. It feels good. And then we're going to tip forward this piece right here, and we're going to fold out the arms that have been hiding inside. Really clever engineering. Push this back again for the moment. We're going to need it again in a second. We can pull out the fists here. All right, and then flip forward the chest again. And this part is really freaking clever engineering. Here's where I love this toy the most. It's going to look great in both modes, but the transformation is so darn fun. We're going to crack this a little bit, rotate this around, push this down into the chest cavity, push the chest back, and then crack this, and the head comes out. It is so freaking much fun to transform, and bam, you've got a killer looking Decepticon. Move the missiles from the back to the arms. And you're ending with a toy that's hyper posable, very close to G1 accurate, and just beautiful to look at. Granted, this came out at the same time the Masterpiece Starscream did. Thundercracker and Skywarp are still a few years away. It's a much better looking piece than this guy is. But this guy is pretty freaking great. And he transforms in such a more satisfying way that isn't work. It's fun. This guy's the real deal. Here's the back. And, you know, the back isn't anything special to look at, but it's not bad either. You're not just hiding the junk back here, as a lot of Transformers will do. It looks really good. Really well-designed toy. I will eventually show you what all these guys look like in both modes, because I think some of you are going to want to see that. But for right now, let's push Skywarp aside and take a look at our little KO here. All right, so we'll transform the exact same way. Pull out the legs. Flip this. Rotate that. Believe it or not, the fins here stick a lot less in the knockoff version than they do on the official one. flip this, open this, pull out the arms, fists over here as well. Oops. That missile does keep coming out. Maybe that's one argument against the knockoff. Maybe if you're more gentle than me, it won't be an issue. Not all of them do that, you know, but each one's manufactured a little differently because it's a less perfect process. It's a cheaper process. All right, my favorite part. Push that down into the canopy, close up, crack it, bring these forward, and look at this guy. Move the missiles. I mean, they're really launchers, but I think of them as missiles. Fits nice and snug there in the arm. Just wasn't doing it so much in the wing. And here we have our knockoff. Honestly, can you tell by looking at it? I can't. The detail is beautiful. And it's not just aping the other ones exactly. It has its own look to some degree. By the way, you absolutely can flip these out for landing gear. I never use them. You don't really need them. But there we go. There's one. Plastic wheels. Nothing memorable. I never use a landing gear. But they're there if you want them. You can see the resemblance to the Earthrise Seeker Jets, can't you? It's similar. These guys are slightly smaller. I'll put a comparison in a moment so you can actually see the difference in height. But really gorgeous toys. I like the chrome. I like the style. Really, can you tell the difference between what's a knockoff and what's an original? If you're a real purist, I'm sure there are minor details that show. But generally speaking, no, I don't see it. So are other ones. As promised, here's a comparison between our Classics Skywarp and the Earthrise Skywarp. Very much based upon the original Classics design. The Earthrise toys are similar in scope, but not quite the same. They're larger and yet lack some of the detail and sophistication that I like about the originals. To look at the size first, our Classics Skywarp is coming in at just under 6 inches tall. Earthrise is coming in at just about 7 inches tall. So it's a little over an inch difference. Beyond that, our Earthrise version It's bigger. The plastic, I don't know how to explain this. It looks duller somehow and feels a lot lighter. Weirdly enough, this toy feels heavier than this toy does. This feels a lot more hollow. It feels like Hasbro saved more money on the production of it. They transform very similarly. And there's nothing wrong with the Earthrise version. It's a much more recent release. It's easier to find inexpensively. I don't know how many colors they made of it. I do believe they released the Rainmaker versions of those Secret Jets, so I believe for Earthrise there's at least 6 of them, maybe more. But I don't think we have a company like CHMS pumping out every possible freaking color of this guy. And that's so much of what makes this one more impressive. Not only do I like it slightly more, but just you could get this guy in every possible variation. In the end, who am I to tell you which version of the Secret Jets is the best? But if you want the most expansive version of them, the best for army building, you've got to get into these classics / Henkei guys, and especially their CHMS knockoffs, which are pretty darn incredible. Remember, there are at least 2 CHMS releases I don't have, the gold and silver chrome versions, and there were other versions of this toy made by other third parties as well that were pretty darn cool too. Quality varies. These guys are pretty close to great. I think Sunstorm had the most problems with the loose legs and the canopy that doesn't quite fit. The rest are pretty well up to snuff and almost indistinguishable from the originals. Really, this is just a great line for building an entire fleet. I can't recommend it enough. It is definitely a cherished part of my collection, and it might be a great thing for you to consider buying as well. It's incredible how a last-second audible play by Hasbro and Takara gave us the beginnings of an amazing line that other companies stepped up and finished so incredibly. And maybe it's because of the success of this line, both in terms of sales and in terms of what it inspired, that Hasbro and Takara got comfortable going back to the well and making more and more new versions of the G1 Classic Transformers since. Maybe we never would have gotten an Earthrise if there hadn't been a Classics first, and if companies like CHMS hadn't stepped in to fill the void and meet the need that Hasbro and Takara weren't hitting. We can always philosophically get in debates about bootlegs and KOs and whether they're a good thing to support and, whether they're hurting the company and raising prices for consumers. But in this case, Hasbro and Takara dropped the ball. They finished a line that wasn't finished, and that's why everybody else came in and met the demand. It didn't prevent people from buying Starscream. If anything, it made people want Starscream more because there was an entire fleet for him to lead as a result. I love this toy line so much. I hope you do too. And guys, it never hurts to look beyond official Transformers to see what else is out there that might very much deserve a place in your collection. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit like and subscribe. That helps our channel immensely when you do so. Share the link with any group, community, page, person that you think might enjoy our content and might thank you for being so kind to show them what we're doing here. Appreciate that so very much. Our release schedule, if you want more videos from us, and I hope you do, in fact, I hope you subscribe and hit a notification so you know when we release new stuff. Every Saturday at 9 a.m. is when we do this, Beyond Transformers, where I introduce you to another toy outside of the official Transformers label that's going to rock your world and spark your imagination. On Wednesdays at 11 a.m., I do Spinner Rack Redux, which is where I talk about classic comic books from days gone by. That might interest you, might not. Maybe you just want to hear the sound of my voice, because, hey, I'd be touched if you did. But 11 a.m. on Wednesdays, Spinner Rack Redux, you'll find me there. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have Classic Comics Are Great, our short-form 1 to 3 minute videos led by my buddy George. That gives you a much more brief and quick look at old comic books that either you remember and miss or never heard of before and might want to check out. That's Classic Comics Are Great. And of course, if you're looking to have greater conversation about all things nerdy, from toys to comic books to video games to RPGs to anything whatsoever, please find us at classiccomics.org. That's our home online where you can find us every single day of the week. We're a small enough community that you can get to be known by people and really make some friends for life, but large enough that there's always something going on. In any hour of the day, there's somebody else on there looking to create conversations and interact. So find us at classiccomics.org for some higher level, friendly conversation with knowledgeable geeks who really want to get to know you as a person, where you might make a friend for life. classiccomics.org. Don't forget to support our sponsor, toyhacks.com. And until next time, stay weird.